Hello everybody, my name is Alexander and I'm the operator of Monad Pool, which is a stake pool on the Cardano blockchain, and I'd like to give you a little demo of a tool I've been working on today that I think will help everybody make better informed staking decisions, which can help to better secure and build a more robust network for all of us. Okay, so if you head on over to the URL in the link below, you should land on a page that looks something like this, and as you can guess, these little dots are actually the locations of all the relays that are registered and currently active on the Cardano blockchain, and the little green underneath it is the ticker symbol of the relay that is associated with that location. You can probably also notice that these dots have varying sizes and colors. And what that means is if you mouse over in the upper right hand corner over here and click on the show legend button, you can see what that means. And this is actually an indicator of how many relays that pool is operating that are registered on the network. A pool can also have some dark relays as a backup security measure that they don't actually register on the blockchain, so that nobody knows that they're there except for them. But what you can see is that a white and very small, it's not on the legend, but a white and small dot is probably a pool that only has one relay, like this guy over here, whereas a large and dark blue dot is someone who's operating a pool with many relays. Like, I'm just picking at random here, Stakhanovite number 1, who's operating with 4 relays. Some people have really gone to crazy lengths and have tons and tons of relays. So one of the things I want to show you here is that actually this upper left-hand button, this, greater than sign, if you click that, you get this little dashboard, which actually shows you a few different layers that are going on here. And so let's say I'm looking at this map and it's looking a bit busy to me, because I'm trying to zoom in and you know what, I can't see anything because all these green texts and all these relays are stacked on top of each other. What you can actually do is you can click on this, and this expands this layer. The layer is made up of points which are pulling in from some data with latitude and longitude. We have a color assigned to it, this radius thing that's going on. But most importantly, this label with the ticker. So let's say this is bothering me because it just looks messy and dirty. We can actually just click on this pool ticker right here on the left under label, and that will get rid of all the labels. And what I've done is I've actually added in another filter where if you click on a relay, you can actually see the pool ticker there. So maybe it gives you a little bit of a cleaner view. What I've also done is I tried to build a little key or query here where that any pools that are sharing a latitude and longitude, sometimes it's difficult to click exactly on the pool that you're looking for because there's might be a lot of pools with the relay operating out of one data center. I built this query here, which is other pools here, and this at least gives you the tickers of other pools in that area. I've also tried to build it up with that radius function. This is not a good example, actually. They're not actually in the same location. But if we were to try and look, maybe let's go over to London. Might be able to find some. You can see looks like there's 2 relays, this bigger blue one and this little one. If you mouse over, because they have different radii, you can kind of get a shot at clicking a larger or smaller relay, even if they're in the same location, which you wouldn't be able to do if they all had the same radius. If you want to make that a bit easier, you can go over here on the left to this radius and up that to something like 30. And let me just make the difference more dramatic between them. So that's that. That's actually just the first layer. I don't think it's actually that interesting. You've probably seen a bunch of visualizations somewhat like this around. And so what I'd like to do is jump out to some of the more interesting visualizations. First of which is relay density. So again, if you look over at this legend over here, it shows you that the darker purple hexes have 1 relay in them, and these bright yellow ones can have anywhere from 22.5 to 155 relays in them. The reason it's broken down like this is because if you expand this, you can actually see that the colors, just look over here on the left right now on the control panel, we're in relay density, we're looking at this hex bin layer. You can see that the color is assigned here, and if we open it and expand that with the little 3-dot menu, the color scale is quantile, which I believe sets the bin so that 20% of all the values of all the discrete cells on the screen get assigned to each color. If we wanted to make it a little bit different, we could just do quantize, which you can see here. If we have 6 buckets, it's just 155 divided by 6 to set the bin size to 26. And here you see a pretty different visualization, which is maybe in some ways a little bit more illustrative of how centralized or condensed some of these relays are, all stacked up on top of each other, and maybe there's these AWS data centers and whatnot. One thing in here, again, no matter what layer you're on, you have this mouse over tooltip, and I believe yeah, actually it does work in the main layer, so we'll go back to that in a second. One thing to note over here is you can do cool things with all of these layers, such as changing the radius of the cells that we're aggregating in. So basically, right, this is just saying how many points from the previous layer are in each of these cells, and then colorize them based on that. So you can see that this densities numbers have jumped up. If you wanted to get more granular, you could drop this down to, like 64 or something. I've defaulted it to just 128, and I'll put it back there because I think that gives you a nice little balance of clustering, aggregating. Also, one thing you can do that I kind of like, even though I don't usually like 3D plots, is you can turn this height option on, and you could crank up the elevation, and then you can set it to linear scale, and height is based on point count. And then what you can do is you pop over into this 3D map view, and it actually, you have to make sure that your height based on is the same as the layer you're looking at. So in this case, it's point count. And it will assign the height of the bar to be the same as the color. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of understand what's going on, maybe. So that's that. I don't really like 3D visualization, so I'll go back to this flat mode over here by clicking, in this upper right hand corner above the legend icon, there's a 3D map option. So you can click that on and off. And you can do other things like filter by count percentile. So if we only wanted to look at large pools, we could slide this over and we'll see that the smaller pools are dropping out, right? And if you do something else, what's that? If you switch this over to quantile, this is actually pretty cool. As it dynamically, I believe, recolors them so that whatever the filter is, it gets a little bit more differentiated. You can see now point count has changed over on the right hand side from 8 to 155 because we're cutting off the lower half of the pools. So that's that. This is again just by raw count of relays, and we can quickly verify that. Maybe this is roughly working. Relay density is telling us that there's 13 relays in this. What is this? Is this Poland? Slavic? No, that might be Estonia. No, Poland's over there. Okay, some other country. Embarrassed. Okay, so if you jump up here, we can see turn the relays back on. Turn this off. What do we see in here? You can see we only see what looks like one dot, but it looks like there's several relays that are stacked up on top of here that are a little bit difficult to get at. So that could be explaining that situation. And yeah, okay, so actually I want to get into what I think is my favorite layer, which is the stake density layer. Let's turn off the relay layer. In this layer, what we've actually done is we take the same 128 kilometer radius, but every pool has a total stake associated with it. And what I've done is I've taken their total stake and divided by the number of relays they have, so that each relay that they have on the network gets apportioned approximately its share of stake that is associated with the pool. And then we ignore what pool it's coming from, and we just sum all those values, and you can kind of see where in the world ADA is staked. I'll note here there's been some discussion. This is not where people are staking from, right? If I'm in, let's say, Brazil, and I'm staking to a pool that has infrastructure in Australia, I will not see anything in Brazil. I will see my stake kind of show up over here in Australia, right? And again, you can see some pretty interesting things, how Cardano is concentrated in different areas around the world. And that's important because, you know, Cardano is a proof of stake blockchain and not a proof of work. And so in some way, you know, if a pool operator were only to have one relay, and their relay and maybe block producer were taken offline, you know, their part of the network is no longer contributing to the proof of stake, what do you call it, consensus. And so that's a little bit of a risk. So when you're looking at this chart, you might want to look for areas that don't have as much stake in them. I'll make an interesting note. I started doing this at Epoch 237, and I think this is of 239 right now. If we switch this over to quantize again rather than quantile, you can see something really interesting happened. A bunch of stake is now appearing in Singapore relative to all the other places in the world. So I don't know what's going on there. Before this epoch, it was much more, I think the largest centers were in New York and Europe, but you can see right now over in the quantized, equally spaced bucket size, that Singapore is just wrecking it. So go Singapore. I don't know if maybe the IOHK pools opened up over there. We can look into that in a second. Anything else to look at? Yeah, we can go back to the flat view, go back to quantile. So again, in here, rather than having equally sized buckets, the buckets make sure that 20% of the cells are white, 20% are light blue, next blue, So this makes sure that there's a kind of, let's say, equal distribution of colors, so you can see where the largest density and lowest density are. Right. One thing you can also do, which I like, maybe let's jump back over and let's turn relays on again. Turn off this one. Is in this second tab over, you can do filters, right? So here we can add a filter, and we can say, I only want to see relays or pools that have more than one relay, because I really don't want my pool to be taken offline by one relay going down. So you can set these filters, and actually let's see who are these people that are running 43 relays, right? If we look at that, it's pool ticker ADA. So Mr. ADA pool is running with 43 relays. I think this is Holger over in the what do you call it, Telegram channel. So you could set this to whatever you wanted to. You can do multiple filters, right? You don't have to just do one. You can also do, this is a pretty interesting one. This is another piece of data I've merged into the data set, which is infra provider. So, and I've also, basically this is taking the ASN description from the Whois record and trying to figure out who might be owning or operating this IP. So I've taken the big ones out, AWS, and which is, you know, Amazon Web Services, and GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, and I've just given that rename them as slightly easier to query things. What's another one? There was, I think Hetzner was one of the largest ones in Europe, and I think OVH was another one. DigitalOcean was a big guy, and I think Linode might have been another decently sized one. So if we look at here, let's turn off the relay count thing. And I don't really like that radius being as big as it is, so I'll switch back over to the layers, open up relays, and crank this down because you can't really see anything with it like that. So I changed that from, I don't know, 50 or 30 to 15. Now this is back to where it was. One thing you can do that I kind of glossed over before is when you're moving around, you can, click on this, and this is showing you if you not just mouse over but click it, this little guy appears, and you can then click on, or you don't have to click actually, I don't think. Let's go. Click this guy. Comparison mode. I didn't have it on. I thought I did. Comparison mode, if this is toggled on, I'll set that to the default. After you click something, when you mouse over something else, you actually get this comparison, which shows you, these numbers in red and green in the tooltip are in this case, absolute, but you can also do relative difference between the one on the right and the one on the left. So you can see that the ADA pool that we had earlier, if we look over against Q15 DApp pool, that they have 90% less relays in them and 96% less pledge and 97% less total stake. I've scaled all these ADA values to be in ADA rather than Lovelace, just to make it a little bit easier to read. So how you might use something like this, right, is if you were looking for a pool, you wanted to find pools that were near you that were, you could say, what would we say? We want relays over one. Most people say at least 2 relays is, if the operator knows what they're doing, that's probably good enough. More is better, but 2 is good to have just a redundant backup. So we're going to say 2, and we want to have, total stake is what I've called it, which is in maybe larger than 1 million. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that you get rewards usually every epoch-ish, and you can say pledges that are, let's say you don't want to stake with a 0 pledge or small pledge pool, so you set this to whatever you want it to be, 75,000, and you can see the dots are thinning out. Let's set this actually higher so that we get a decent thinning out, maybe something like 500,000. So these are the pools that have at least 500,000 ADA staked, are pledged, and over 1 million staked, and are operating with 2 relays. So like, let's say if I lived in this Michigan, I could see that if I went over here, I might want to delegate to Agape, right? And I can compare that to other people, what's going on here. Oh, this guy, maybe Queen Ada looks a little bit better to me. So I'm going to click that, and now I'm going to compare these other guys against Queen Ada. Right, what's this going on? So he's got a little bit more stake, quite a bit more relays, but less pledge. So you can, make decisions based on that. One small note on this data set, this is built using some publicly available APIs. So rather funnily, the main thing that's happening here behind the scenes is I'm taking a latitude or an IP address and hitting a service and trying to get a latitude and longitude out of it. So if we turn off all these filters, and I'll look for my pool, because I know it's wrong actually. Pool ticker, monad. So you can see monad says it's, I don't know, what is that, Lake Erie, somewhere in New York. Let's get over there. We click here, it says it's here, and yeah, that's right, it's 2 relays. That's what I've registered. That's the fee, that's the pledge right now. It's going up soon, I hope. And the stake, and we're actually scheduled to mint our first block later this evening, so I'll give you all an update when that happens. But actually both of these relays, from what I understand with my provider, are actually in Chicago and Seattle, and so this must be some kind of error in the service I'm using that's resolving to lat longs. However, I think I've checked with a few other pool operators, and I can give an example that I think is correct. It is over here. What's this? Karma pool. I think this was the guy. This is the guy who runs pooltable.io, and we were checking, and yeah, his relay is resolving to the right location. So it seems like for the most part, things are going correctly. I have a smaller provider, so I wanted to get my relay and pool off of AWS to try to contribute a little bit to more diverse network, so that, you know, like when Netflix goes down or Google Docs isn't working, that's because GCP and AWS, you know, might be having some network issues. So from my perspective, having a variety of providers on the providing the underlying hardware that the network runs on is in the best interest of everyone. So yeah, looks like I'm getting pinged on Telegram, so I'm gonna cut it there, and let me know if you have any questions. One other thing that I'll just note is if you build up, you can build up your own layers too, right? I think we mentioned that earlier by just clicking on add layer and, you know, choosing what type. For the most part, you're probably going to want to use Latin long, or you'll have to use Latin long for this to mean anything. Lat is just latitude, long is longitude, and that makes all the entries kind of fit the space that they're in, or be located to the right position. But let's say you do build up a layer and you want to share it with someone else. I would really appreciate it if you went over and clicked this little squiggly icon, you hit copy, and then maybe you take that over to something like Pastebin and click paste. Come on, internet. Yeah, and so now you have this new paste, you dump that in here, and you hit create new paste, and then if you send that to me on Telegram, or a link to that in the comments below, I can check it out and see what you've done, and maybe you've come up with a good visualization that other people could benefit from, and then I can incorporate that into the default landing page. If you mess it up so much that you want to get back to 0, if you just hit refresh, it should reload with the default layers and settings that I've set up. So you can play around and not worry that you've screwed things up. You're only affecting the layers in your view into the data, so you don't have to worry about messing it up for anyone else. Okay, thanks. Like I said, this is brought to you by the Delegators of Monad. And so if you're interested in that, you can check it out over here at a little generic site, what we're doing. But I'd like to keep doing stuff like this. I think some of the things that I want to develop are maybe some more dynamic visualizations around blocks as they're minted, and maybe you know, lines from block to block, or from relay to relay, when there are, how do you say, as blocks come in, you can kind of see how the network is, who's responsible for the blocks as they're coming in. I think that might be kind of cool. Right now, it's not really possible, from what I understand from on-chain data, to draw the kind of topology, the lines between the different relays, because each provider or each pool operator kind of sets that privately themselves, who they're connecting to, and that is not shared publicly with anyone else. So when you see that kind of thing on PoolTool.io, I think it is of the, you know, the graph with the relay or the pool tickers as the vertices, and these red lines as edges, I think that's generated using privately gathered data from Pool Tools, SendTip, or something else. So that's not something I currently am able to do. But if you have any other ideas for visualizations that you'd like to see on this, I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for your time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.